Hey there, welcome to Help Solve the Case. I'm Christine, retired detective, sergeant, forensic genetic genealogist, and lover of the law. If you don't know me, I've worked in the legal industry starting as a paralegal since I was 19, believe it or not. And I love taking a look at these court cases, seeing what's happening in the legal process, and bringing you my expertise. I forgot to add, I am also a law enforcement expert. So I get called into court, into cases to evaluate what the police did right, what the police did wrong. And it's very interesting to me to see how these cases pan out because we have the fact and then we have the presentation of the case. So I'm glad to have you guys here. I really would appreciate it. I'm trying to grow this channel. If you would like, subscribe and share. If this is what you'd like to hear and see, glad to have you here. Now, in the Carmelo Anthony case, I had read previously, if you haven't watched that video, I read through the police report, what police did, what they thought, what they knew. At the time they made the arrest. They made the arrest pretty quickly right after this happened. And I had concerns based on the very limited information that was in the police report. Okay, they took him into custody for premeditated murder pretty quickly. Okay, and that is a pretty big charge unless you, in my opinion, unless you witness that incident, to just arrest right away. So I think it was, like I said, very interesting. That's my word. If you don't know it, if you don't follow me, that's my word when I definitely want to know more. And because there's very tight security on this case, we don't get a lot of information. And we've got this Channel 8 News in the area here that is apparently tweeting out or getting out some information through this. Okay, this John Paniker and Rebecca Lopez and Jason Trahan and Chris I'm not sure how to say that, Sadegi from WFAA in Texas. Okay, so I just thought I would go through and provide my insight based on what they're saying from what they're hearing, because now we're not getting all of it. We don't have the trial transcript, but we're getting what these reporters feel that is important, and I thought I would be able to comment on that. Okay, so if you're not aware of this, right, Carmelo Anthony is a former student, Frisco Centennial High School, charged with murder. The April 2nd, 2025 killing of Austin Metcalf, who was a student at Frisco Memorial High School. That morning, per investigators, right, I'm reading this here with you, a track meet at the Kukendall Stadium, a confrontation began under a team tent where athletes gathered during inclement weather. It ended when Metcalf was stabbed in the chest. Anthony was arrested and has claimed self-defense. And if you haven't read the one with the police department, you can go back and watch that. He started making statements almost immediately. The case drew and is drawing intense national attention. Some people say, are we going to have a race issue? Is race involved? We don't know. And we've heard some things as we go through. I've only heard bits and pieces, but as we go through this, we don't know what's going to happen. Okay. Seems very tense. Fueled by social media debate centered on the races of the two young men, public protests, online threats, and allegations of doxing involving people connected to the proceedings. Now, I have not heard that. Because Anthony was 17 at the time of the incident, Texas law allows him to be tried as an adult, and he faces a possible sentence ranging from 5 years to life in prison if convicted. Because the death did not meet the qualifications to be charged as capital murder, and because of Anthony's age, the death penalty was never an option in the case. Okay, so they're talking about Judge John Roach has banned the cameras, the live streams, all this stuff. They've got a very tight security perimeter. And they're thinking they might have potential demonstrators. So they're talking about this live coverage here that they're getting from John Paniker, who's in the courtroom each day. Okay, and then I guess he gets the information to Rebecca Lopez, who's outside. They also say that they have a legal expert. So maybe we can take a look at that. But I thought I would walk through their notes here and let you know what I think, because all I knew about this case in the beginning was what the police report said. So, it looked like they were obviously starting with the jury selection, that it continued on Wednesday. They said 600 potential jurors summoned, about 50 excused during today's questioning. This is the first day. They're going to go through the lawyers with the remaining. Some get initially just eliminated, then they go through the challenges. And I know we've heard that there are potential jury issues here. So they want to cut it down from 550 to 250. That's a lot of people. That's a very fast-paced, potentially draining day. We see here that Judge John Roach stressed to potential jurors the importance of being fair, unbiased, and able to consider only the evidence heard in court. And we've talked about in other videos how sometimes jurors come back and they say, well, I wish I would have known this, or I wish I would have known this. And it's very important to talk about the trial coverage. What trial coverage, what did they know before they came in that could have biased them? So, he said, quote, would you want you sitting on the jury, end quote. Quote, people's lives depend on the decisions you make every day in this building, end quote. And we saw in the Murdaugh trial some issues with the jury. Okay. So you definitely don't want to have that happen. You don't want to do this and then have to redo it based on jury issues. Okay. So he's talking here that these are very important questions. If you haven't been on a jury before, or you haven't even considered being on a jury before, one of the questions when I became a police officer that I had to personally wrestle with was, can I take a life? If it comes to it, I thought for myself, I don't want to say it's a no-brainer, right? But you would think that you would protect yourself at all costs. But to protect other people, could I kill a person to protect myself and others? That's a huge question that you have to wrestle with. And sometimes police officers can't do it and they got to quit. And that's not right or wrong. It's just, what are you comfortable with? The same thing with the jury. Not that they're going to have to necessarily pull the trigger, so to speak. But if they have to sentence somebody to death or some punishment, or let somebody go, there's a lot that weighs on that. Emotionally, maybe morally. Okay, so the judge here is saying, quote, it's okay if you heard about this case, but you have to set that aside, end quote. So they're saying, even if you had prior knowledge, you're going to have to ignore that. Quote, you have to follow the law, end quote, even if you don't agree with it. That's a challenge, isn't it? Could you do that? Good questions. All right. He says, for anyone who can't follow the law, quote, the honorable thing to do is recuse yourself, end quote. And quote, if you have a disagreement with me, you need to tell me, end quote. Okay. He told them not to rely on past press accounts that they may have seen regarding what allegedly happened in the case. He continued to stress the importance of them following instructions, not talking about the case, either inside or outside the courtroom. Okay, we got Murdaugh trial, right? He says, quote, I am not jacking around, end quote. Goodness gracious, that's a Texas judge for you, isn't it? Quote, do not disobey my instructions, end quote. He reminded them they could be held in contempt and spend up to 6 months in jail and pay a $500 fine. He is ruling his courtroom with, like they say, an iron fist. Okay. Court 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. each weekday, and on Saturdays, case will last about 2 weeks, quote, through June 12th or later, end quote. He told them that this afternoon he wants them to finish their questionnaires, and once they're completed, free to go home for the day. Okay. Told them not to do any, quote, independent research, end quote. We will have a jury picked on Wednesday. So let's see. Didn't know if they're going to be sequestered. Oh, you know what? I read it wrong. I need to start at the bottom. Okay, so So they went there. Okay, so day 2, we got to start at the bottom. Kind of hard to read this, but we got to start at the bottom. Okay. All right, jury selection set this morning. Okay, the jury selection took place. Mitchell told the jury it doesn't matter if they are conservative or liberal. He wants the jury pool to speak up and give their views. Quote, I need to hear from y'all, end quote. Quote, we got a lot of people, and for some people, this ain't the right case for, end quote, said Mitchell, speaking to the approximately 250 remaining members of the jury pool, which is not visible on the video feed. Quote, there are going to be 12 people to decide this case. Those 12 people take a different oath that I will render a true verdict based on the law and the evidence, end quote. So Dewey Mitchell is from the Collin County District Attorney's office, the prosecutor. Okay. So they're going back and forth. I'm not going to go. I'm going to try to summarize this because we know that the jury has been picked. They're talking about the age. They've got kids, religious views, testifying whether the defendant testified or didn't testify. I know it says a number of potential jurors say they cannot put bias and prejudice aside, cannot see or unhear what they've heard about the case, cannot give a life sentence, cannot send a young man to prison. Okay, so a lot of issues here. So they were speaking up. They were also asked from the defense attorney, Mike Howard, quote, do you have a right to defend yourself, end quote. He asked the panel. He asked them about bias and prejudice, quote, how many of you feel like I can't set that aside, end quote. One potential juror said he's not sure he can set aside his prejudice after watching the news and his, quote, detective brain came on, quote, I'm just being honest, end quote. Another said, and I think these are good insights, right? Another said, quote, in my younger years, I've been in similar situations, end quote. He said, quote, I want a fair and unbiased trial for this young gentleman, end quote. But he says he does not feel he can put in his bias. Quote, I don't want another 600 people coming in here and Judge Roach coming after me, end quote. Several jurors said their personal experience would influence their decision. Some jurors, this is interesting, some jurors said that despite the defense not carrying a legal burden, remember, innocent until proven guilty, this is very interesting here. Despite the defense not carrying a legal burden to put any evidence on whatsoever, they still feel the defense needs to present a case to, quote, prove something, end quote. But who has the burden? The state does. You are innocent until proven guilty. And this line here says, no. Not according to those people. Okay? A juror wants an example of reasonable doubt. These are great. I'm glad this reporter said that. I think these are really good, especially on this channel, what we talk about. These are really good things to talk about. A juror wants an example of reasonable doubt. We always say, why would the jury do that? Why would they do that? How could they come to that conclusion? Well, here's why. Because here's what's trapped in their head. Okay? What's an example of reasonable doubt? Howard told him he could not give one because each case and circumstance is different. He only said reasonable doubt is a heavier burden of proof than, quote, preponderance of the evidence, end quote, and, quote, clear and convincing, end quote, which are separate legal standards. Quote, reasonable doubt, end quote, is the highest evidentiary burden in American criminal law. These are all great insights. Okay. Then they're asking questions. Could somebody, if they found somebody guilty, could they consider not even 5 years if a punishment? So they're testing, the defense is testing the waters about, okay, even if something happened, would they consider a light sentence or a harsher sentence? Okay, here's another one. If you have found a defendant guilty on a manslaughter charge, anyone not consider 2 years as a punishment? Probation. Some panelists felt 2 years is too low to consider for, quote, killing someone, end quote. Others said they don't understand the questions, right? See, this is important. One juror said would use the evidence to render a verdict, then follows it up with, quote, Judge Roach is scary, exclamation point, end quote. He also reminds them to put aside their thoughts on personalities in the case. Quote, it's okay to think, I don't like that Mike Howard guy, end quote. About setting their feelings aside from the defense attorneys. And so I guess the judge said by the end of the day, we're going to have a jury. So let's see. Talking about the biases. Okay. We talked about that. So they got the 18 jurors. Okay. On day 2. All right. So let's go to day 3. All right. So again, we got, I thought it was John. I get Jobin Paniker is inside. Okay. Austin Metcalf's parents there. Carmelo Anthony's parents are there. And we've got a sketch artist, more than 200 people waiting to get inside the courtroom. There are 27 spots for the public filled up 10 minutes after the curfew lifted. Okay. So Jobin Paniker reports, prosecutors have made several pretrial motions. We love our motions, right? Going back and forth. The defense has not objected. I guess they're not going to decide them right then. Opening statements, District Attorney Bill Worski said, quote, he plunged a knife into his heart and ran away, end quote. Worski tells jurors describing what he says Anthony did to Austin Metcalf. Worski called the killing, quote, an unjustified, provoked murder, end quote. Quote, this case is not self-defense, end quote. Quote, was simply senseless, end quote. Now, in the process, the defense does have to file a notice of the defenses, what they intend to potentially use to defend. So, probably, and we heard it was self-defense in the police report, that might be one of the things that they sent over. So the prosecution is trying to cut that off at the pass. Say, no, right? He's trying to plant that seed before the defense even brings that up, right? Before the defense, we talk about here's the prosecution's show and here's the defense's show. The prosecution is trying to plant that seed before the prosecution goes first, then the defense goes, right? So they're planting that seed in here. Here's the prosecutor. Worski told jurors they would see surveillance video and, quote, that video tells the story, end quote. He references words witnesses claim Anthony said before Metcalf was stabbed, quote, touch me, see what happens, end quote. Worski argues that Anthony provoked and goaded Metcalf into, quote, touching him, end quote. Okay, so provoked and goaded is behavior. I don't want to say enticing, right? But that's provocative, done to provoke, okay, to get a response. Quote, this is an provoked, unjustified murder, end quote. This killing is senseless, end quote. At one point, Worski points to Anthony, who at the time was a student at Frisco Centennial, attending a track meet at Metcalf's Frisco Memorial High School. Quote, this man, end quote, Worski told jurors, made a, quote, beeline, end quote, for the memorial tent. Several memorial athletes told Anthony to leave, Worski said. Okay, so this is the first time we've heard other people asked him to leave. Now, because what we have heard was that it was Metcalf and 2 friends, I believe, that came up. So are these other athletes the ones that were with Metcalf, or were they other people? This is the first time that I'm hearing this. The tent was their, quote, locker room, end quote. Worski said Anthony goaded and taunted, those are big words, right? And provoked Metcalf. Worski said Anthony produced the knife and, quote, swiftly and plunged it into Austin, end quote. Worski said Anthony then ran off and tried to, quote, blend in, end quote. Worski told jurors that students at the track meet pointed out Anthony as he, quote, is trying to leave the track meet, end quote. Worski told jurors that when an officer who arrived on scene encountered Anthony, he radioed, quote, I have the alleged suspect, end quote. Worski said the officer reported that Anthony then told him, quote, I am not alleged, I did it, end quote. And we read that in the police report. Again, if you want to see the police report, it's in the other video. I'll try to see if I can hook it to the end of this video. Anthony also allegedly told the officer, quote, he touched me first and I told him not to, end quote, according to Worski. He told jurors tossed the knife and, quote, tried to slip away from the scene, end quote. He told jurors they will see the video from the scene and they will hear from witnesses. Quote, you cannot provoke someone and produce a knife and take a life, end quote. Right? So we've got two discrepancies here that Worski is saying, the prosecutor is saying that Anthony told the officer he touched me first and I told him not to. So the police knew, that's what I'm saying, the police knew that he said, he hit me first, or he did this, right? He hit me first. And in some battery statutes and things like that, you've got to get the elements of the crime, right? So what is the legal, lawful response to unwanted touching or unwanted force, if that is what happened, right? So we have to determine here, the jury has to determine what actually happened here. Okay, so then we have here, okay, Mike Howard gives his opening statement, quote, there's been a lot of noise around this case, end quote, a lot of completely false information, end quote. We can see the drawing right there. Great job. They're doing, pretty detailed drawings, I guess, pretty quick. Referring to Anthony by his nickname, quote, Mello, end quote, he described his client as, quote, a son. He is a brother, the oldest of four. He is a friend, boyfriend, a student who graduated with a 3.7 GPA while holding two jobs, playing football, track, ... end quote. Howard told jurors that Anthony's father works as a finance manager with a car dealership and his mother is a nurse. They are from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Howard said. Quote, they wanted their family to have a better life. That's why they came to DFW middle of freshman year, end quote, Howard told jurors. Quote, they came to Frisco for that better life, end quote. Howard described what happened on April 2nd, 2025 at the Frisco ISD Stadium. Every team at the track meet had a tent except for Anthony's school Centennial, which only had a tarp. Quote, Mello is in a normal mood. He's relaxing with his teammates, end quote, Howard told the jury. As the weather turns bad, quote, Mello goes to look for a place to get out of the rain, end quote, and goes to the Memorial High School tent where Metcalf is. Howard told the jurors the video they will see establishes some things but will not show everything. Quote, Mello walks out and sees someone he recognizes, end quote, from Memorial High School, Howard said. The two were talking and, quote, everything seemed fine, end quote, Howard said. Quote, everyone there, parentheses under the tent, except for Mello, is from Memorial, end quote, Howard said. Howard told jurors that Austin and his twin brother, Hunter, confronted Anthony, who is 5'8" and 130 pounds. Howard said that Metcalf and his brother are 6'1" and about 213 pounds, which is about 83 pounds heavier than his client. Now, this is interesting to me, and let me give you some insight here. Working as a police officer, we have rules, and I know these are not cops, but I think you might find this interesting. So working as a cop, we have rules about use of force and different things, and how we can apply force to make an arrest or do something to gain compliance, or if somebody is physically attacking us. Now, in using deadly force, right? And I personally had these discussions because sometimes I wish I had the picture to show you the picture. Most of the guys in my academy are like this tall, right? They're tall. They're like 6'5", and I'm 5'2". Okay, so I'm down here. And so this situation here, 5'8" and 130, okay? And we're not on either side. We're just talking about how this all plays out. Anthony is 5'8" and 130, okay? And the other guys are 6'1" and 213 pounds. Now, imagine me at 5'2" and 113 versus 6'1" and 213 pounds. Do I have more fear or danger of a threat of being incapacitated by a person who is 12 inches taller than me and 100 pounds more than me? I think you would say absolutely. Okay, so am I more justified in using force to defend myself? Yes. And that was the training that I went through to understand the differences between people and how I could use force depending on the threat. Not just the type of threat, but the height of the threat, the capacity, let's just say that, the capacity of the threat to incapacitate me. So when we see 5'8" and 130, that's 83 pounds. Like, that's almost my situation. Okay, he's a little bit taller. So I'm just throwing that out there because it brought that back, right? And this is what I think you guys are here for. I really appreciate it. And I will ask you, please, 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 if you could help. I'm really trying to get to 1,000 subscribers so that I could get monetized, so I could do so much more for so many and continue to bring you this information and these type of cases and impart my expertise and my insight based on somebody who's been in all parts of this equation. So thank you very much. But yes, so that is just something that we need to think about. Okay, so the defense attorney is trying to put that visual, just like I did with you, trying to put that visual in the jurors' minds. Okay. Howard said, Anthony told them, quote, "As long as you don't touch me, we're cool," end quote. Howard said, Austin Metcalf said, "I know you don't got anything in that bag." Quote, Austin makes the first physical contact, end quote. Quote, Austin grabs, shoves, pushes, end quote. Anthony defense lawyer said. Jeff Metcalf, Austin Metcalf's father, shook his head when Howard said this. So I'm just reading this. So not only do we have a shove, we have a grab, a shove, and a push. Okay, so that's just not a, man, get away from me. It's a grab, a shove, and a push. However that happened. That's 3 separate actions. Grab, shove, push. Okay, so is it grab by the shirt, shaking, and then shoving? That's 3 actions. So theoretically, again, we're not taking sides. We're just pretending as we evaluate this on each side. That's 3 potentially aggressive actions, according to the defense, 3 aggressive actions that Metcalf took against Anthony. And they're 83 pounds and how many inches taller? And there's 3 of them, and Anthony is 1 person. Think about yourself. Again, we're just what ifing, okay? Howard said Anthony was forced to decide what to do, quote, in fear and chaos, end quote. Quote, after Anthony defended himself, he ran, end quote. He dropped the knife by the bleachers. Did he chuck it? No, it says he dropped it by the bleachers. Quote, he left it right by the tent, end quote. Howard said prosecutors' contention that Anthony was, quote, slipping away was wrong. Anthony went directly to a coach, Howard told jurors. Okay. Talking about a forensic video analyst. 5 different videos. Prosecutors showed the first video to the jurors in the courtroom. Wide shot of the football stadium, half the field visible, difficult to see. He worked on magnification. One still image showed Anthony handcuffed walking with 2 officers. Increase in security outside. Okay, let's see. Okay, so now they're going to see zoomed in video from the stadium. It shows the yellow Memorial High School tent, figures under the tent. Mitchell and witness Mark Porter take jurors frame by frame, showing Metcalf entered the tent at 9:54 a.m. A few minutes later, Porter testifies that it, quote, appears one person pushes, end quote, another, but it's unclear who is shown. Someone then can seen running down the bleachers. In another video from another camera, Metcalf and his twin brother are walking into the stadium. Jeff Metcalf, their father, has his head down, not watching. Their mother, though, appears to be watching. Another video shown to jurors appears to show an individual getting handcuffed by an officer. Someone is shown dropping to their knees, and what appears to be staff running in and out of the frame, directing people with their hands. Okay, then they went to lunch. So we're not seeing too much clarity from this video. Prosecutors continue to go over the surveillance videos with their expert for the jury. None of the videos we've seen today show the altercation or the stabbing. The images in the video are not clear because they have to be magnified to see them. Also, it was raining that day, and there are other people walking and holding umbrellas as they cross the tent at the bottom of the bleachers. Prosecutor Dewey Mitchell appears to be trying to establish how much time elapses from the time Austin Metcalf and his twin brother enter the stadium and reach their team's tent until the altercation. So, we talk a lot, I talk a lot, you guys listen, about eyewitness testimony. And whether you think it's fallible or not, good or bad, fallible, we have to talk about this. And so when we do, oh my goodness, I can't think of it. I write it all the time. Oh my goodness. It's not a Dauber challenge. It's another one. Deseret hearings. It goes to suggestiveness, but it also goes to ability to see. So when we're going to be talking about civilian witnesses, eyewitness testimony, and earwitness testimony, are they going to be able to see? Because it's raining. It's raining, and that's one part of it. So is the video helpful? Is the video not helpful? Okay. They continue. Mark Porter, the video expert, testified after the altercation. He believes it's Carmelo Anthony seen, quote, running or perhaps jogging, end quote, away from the tent. There are 2 individuals behind what is believed to be Anthony, pointing his direction. He appears to be moving toward the entrance of the stadium. Prosecutor Mitchell ends his examination of the forensic video witness by saying 15 minutes elapsed from the time Austin Metcalf and his twin brother walk into the stadium to the time that Anthony is led away under arrest. It's pretty quick. From the time they entered the stadium to the arrest, and I talked about how quick they made that arrest. Defense attorney Toby Shook cross-examines Mark Porter because the defense, even though the defense side of the court is not going on now, they get to cross-examine, okay? Shook gets Porter to admit that the video doesn't definitively show when the argument between Anthony and Metcalf begins or ends. Porter testifies that there appears to be some shoving on the video. Porter said it is possible the person being pushed may have been sitting down. Porter says it, quote, appears to be a shove, end quote. And when asked by Shook, quote, could it have been a punch, end quote, Porter answers, quote, that's a possibility, end quote. Porter testified he cannot tell with certainty whether what is shown is a, quote, shove, end quote, or a, quote, punch, end quote. After the incident, the video appears to show Anthony walking on a track. Okay, is that leaving or he's walking on the track? That's different than what we've heard. He is met by a coach who has his arms over him in what looks like some form of embrace. It appears Anthony is squatting on the track and grabbing his head. Shook appears to be trying to make the point that Anthony did not run away from the scene and, quote, hide, end quote, like the state said he did. Now, going back to our 3 against 1, 2 against 1, height difference, weight difference. If one person is sitting down and you have people towering over you on the bleachers, how does that make you feel? You're trapped, you can't get up, you can't punch anybody, you can't do anything. Like, I don't know. I'm just pointing this out, the dynamics that we're hearing being reported here, right? Okay. The prosecution's next witness is Robert Starr, head track coach for Memorial. He coached Austin and his brother. Coach Starr told jurors about the importance of these team tents at track meets. They are, quote, meant specifically for students of the school, end quote. Do they have a policy on bringing weapons? Weapons are not allowed in any shape, form, or fashion. Okay, now we have this is like a summary quote. We're here because this young man, Carmelo Anthony, decided to take a knife to a high school track meet, end quote, Prosecutor Bill Worski told jurors during his opening. Quote, this case has nothing to do with race and it has nothing to do with self-defense, end quote. Worski told the jury Austin Metcalf shoved Anthony, and so he launched a, quote, sneak attack, end quote. Whatever that means. He said Anthony goaded Austin when he was asked to leave, quote, you have to make me, end quote. Okay, I think that's the first time we heard that. Worski said that Austin had only been in the stadium about 6 minutes when he was stabbed to death. 2 minutes after Austin got to the tent, Anthony, quote, enters the picture, end quote. Now, see, I thought I had heard something different, that Anthony was in the tent before Austin got there. I don't know, because we can't see the video. Metcalf told Anthony to leave. Anthony said, quote, touch me again, and see what happens, end quote. Metcalf, quote, took the bait, end quote, and Anthony, quote, swiftly and suddenly, end quote, stabbed him, Worski told the jurors. So think about this. We have to get into, you guys know, I talk about semantics and word choice here. Metcalf, this is the prosecutor saying this. Metcalf told Anthony to leave. Anthony said, touch me again. So he already got touched. Okay, what is a battery? Hold on. Okay, and we're not taking sides here, but this is very important. The prosecutor just said that Metcalf touched him already once before something happened. Do you understand that? Did you catch that? So when I pulled this up, they said that they don't have a separate battery statute, but assault. Intentionally or knowingly, so it's intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly causes bodily injury to another, including the person's spouse. Intentionally or knowingly threatens another with imminent bodily injury, including the person's spouse, or intentionally or knowingly causes physical contact. It doesn't say injury, it says contact with another when the person knows or should reasonably believe that the other will regard the contact as offensive or provocative. This is why I have such an interest and such a I don't want to say issue with this case, because there it is. There it is right there. Assault. So Carmelo Anthony, according to what the state said and what witnesses have said and what the defense attorney says, he was assaulted first. Intentionally or knowingly causes physical contact with another when the person knows or should reasonably believe that the other will regard the contact as offensive or provocative. What did we hear that word provocative? We heard that from the state. Okay? That provocative word. So who's getting provoked here? I'm just looking down here. I mean, okay. Yeah, there, I don't know. There you go. I don't know. I'm confused. Okay. It's right here. Metcalf told Anthony to leave. Anthony said, quote, touch me again and see what happens, end quote. Metcalf, quote, took the bait, end quote, and Anthony, quote, swiftly and suddenly, quote, stabbed him. So he's responding to an assault. And then he gets assaulted again. So is the state saying, just ignore that he got assaulted? Don't start there. Go to the next one. What do you think about that? And I understand somebody died. Like, I'm not saying, but this is legalese. Like, this is the legal parameters of these criminal laws. Like, there is a criminal assault here. Do you understand that? There is a criminal assault. Intentionally or knowingly causes physical contact with another when the person knows or should reasonably believe that the other will regard the contact as offensive or provocative. Let me know. Let me know. Like, I don't know how you get around that. This is the cop me. There's an element of a crime here. Okay? All right. Coaches stopped Anthony, who told them, quote, he touched me, as if somehow this fact justifies this act, as if somehow that fact justifies murder, end quote. Okay, so is the prosecutor saying the right thing here? Should the prosecutor be saying, yes, he did batter him, but it did not rise to the level of return force? Okay, remember I talked to you about me learning my force and how much force I could use. We have what's called a use of force continuum. They do this, you do this, da 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 da, right? And then we include my height and weight, my handicap, and we want to call it that, okay? Should the prosecution be saying, like, I wonder, here's a good question, is the defense going to show that a criminal battery occurred? I would. And again, if somebody lost his life, I understand. But this is like chess. This is legal chess. And each side wants to win the game. And we have the facts. There's a battery. Assault. There's assault. First. Right? Do you see that? I see it. The cop in me sees it. The legal interpreter sees it. Okay? So, all right. You go back. Okay. I don't know if we're in the right. We might have lost our page. It might have refreshed. Okay. All right. Defense attorney Mike Howard told jurors in his opening that they should, quote, believe less than half of what you see. There's a lot of completely false information, end quote. He said Anthony, trying to get out of the rain, goes under the other team's tent because he sees someone he knows and goes to talk to him. Quote, he doesn't slip in like some thief in the night, end quote, Howard said, who added there were about 10 to 15 students under the tent. He said Metcalf and his brother, quote, confront, end quote, Anthony and tell him to leave. Quote, as long as you don't touch me, we are cool, end quote, Howard said his client told the boys. He said Anthony was seated and Austin was being aggressive. Okay, so that's another issue, that he was being aggressive. As I'm reading this, I was thinking about, have you ever seen somebody like at a bar, or they start having words and then everybody's grabbing their person, like, come on. And then they're like, I'm going. Get your hands off me. I'm going. Right? So was that what he was saying? Like, just like, don't touch me. I'm going to go. Right? Was that what he was kind of, especially because he was seated, was that what he was trying to do? That, all right, man, I'm going. Again, we have to think about this. Okay. What did he say? Yeah, Austin was being aggressive. This is what the defense is saying. Okay. All right. Now we have track coach Robert Starr, that the kids have to sign a code of conduct about weapons. He asked several of his upperclassmen to be, quote, leaders on that day. He said he sent a text to Austin Metcalf to step up and be a leader that day. He said there was no official rain delay. When he went over to check on the commotion in his team's tent, quote, I see Austin on the ground and his face is purple and there's a big hole in his chest, end quote. Ugh. Quote, coach, do something, end quote, the coach said Hunter Metcalf told him. He said students pointed to Anthony as he was walking to the track, not the exit. The coach said he approached Anthony. Quote, he was walking very calmly. That's not a fleeing, is it? Again, we're not on either side, but look at the difference in the story. He was walking very calmly, and I asked him, what the hell did you do? End quote. He said Anthony responded, quote, he put his hands on me, end quote, which we see is an assault. It's an assault in the Texas Constitution. The coach told jurors he threw his hat and put his hands in the air as he was overcome by frustration and emotion. I can't imagine. I'm sure he was. Quote, everybody was praying, end quote. The coach testified, becoming emotional. During this testimony, Jeff Metcalf is doubled over in his seat and crying quietly, shaking his head as the coach also cries on the stand. Quote, I just knew Austin was gone, end quote. The coach identifies Anthony in the courtroom, saying he looks different now. Quote, he's clean cut today, end quote. Coach Starr, who is black, testified he threatened to kick Austin Metcalf off the track team because he decided to go fishing and leave early from a school event. Starr said he let him back on the team for this district meet because he was captain of the football team and wanted him to learn a lesson. Prosecutor Bill Worski showed a text exchange between the coach and Metcalf. So, quote, be a leader, end quote, quote, I'm going to lean on my older guys, end quote, quote, for sure, coach, I got you, end quote. So, does be a leader to you have a different meaning than when I first read it? I'm thinking step up and take charge. Now, does it mean be an example? You want to go, you skipped out, you left early, you weren't here for your other people. Like, what does that have a different context for you? It does for me. Okay. The day after the stabbing, the coach said he texted Metcalf's phone, even though he knew the young man was gone. Quote, love you, man. Sorry I didn't say enough, end quote. He cried in court. That's rough. We don't ever want to lose anybody, right? On cross-examination, defense attorney Toby Shook asked the coach about track culture. Shook asked if buddies ever go and talk to someone in another team's tent. It's not common, not part of his team's policy. but because of security, people's personal belongings, etc. The coach testified he did not know that Centennial Anthony's school did not have a tent that day. So, as a coach, as a teacher, again, I don't want to provoke people one way or the other. Are you going to allow students, do you have a responsibility? Are you going to allow them to stand out in the rain when there's a tent? Just a thought. Just a thought. Okay. The prosecution called Tiffany Whitaker Memorial's athletic trainer. She told the jurors track tent is, quote, like a locker room. The visiting team does not go to the home team, end quote, which she called an unwritten rule in track culture. She was working the district meet. A lot of confusion on that day because of the rain. Some were on the field, some were on the bus, some were under the tent. At one point, she, quote, heard screaming, end quote. She said a student pointed out Anthony as the person involved. She said she told another coach that Anthony, quote, stabbed someone, end quote, and to get in front of him to prevent him from walking further. She tended to Austin, performing CPR until paramedics arrived. Quote, I am in autopilot. You just keep going until help arrives, end quote. She was not hopeful when she saw the wound. Coach Vincent Hooper asked about track culture. Quote, you want your kids in your camp, end quote. He said after the stabbing, another coach asked him to hold Anthony, so he said he put his arms around him and asked, quote, what did you do, end quote. Coach Hooper said that Anthony answered, quote, he put his hands on me. I stabbed him, end quote. Coach Hooper told Anthony that this could change his entire life if Metcalf died. Hooper testified that Anthony told him, quote, he's not going to die, end quote. Metcalf's mother, who is in the courtroom, began crying. Hooper described Metcalf after he had been stabbed, quote, he was pale white and there was a puddle of blood, end quote. Defense lawyer Toby Shook asked Hooper whether he agreed that Anthony genuinely felt upset about the incident. Hooper said he did. Okay. Okay, here's the 911 recording. Quote, I need paramedics right away. I have an athlete that was stabbed, end quote. In the background are a confusion of voices yelling, crying, stay with me, quote, stay with me, Austin, stay with me, Austin, stay with me, Austin, end quote, a male voice says on the emergency recording. Several people in the courtroom audience cried as they listened to the call, grabbing and using tissues. Carmelo Anthony had his head down. Prosecutor Bill Worski shows jurors the jacket that Coach Rudman used to stop Metcalf's bleeding. Worski puts on gloves, opened an evidence bag, pulled it out. Quote, how much blood was there externally on Austin Metcalf, end quote. Worski asked quite a bit. He did everything he could. On cross, defense lawyer Toby Shook asked the witness if he was aware that Centennial did not have a tent at the track meet that day. He said he was not. Okay, so we got 53 minutes here, and this is day 3. So I'm going to stop here, and we'll continue with the other days. Again, thank you for being here. I would love to know your comments below. Again, not taking any sides here. I come in and I consult on both sides. I have expertise on both ends of it. And I'm talking about the court process and the court procedure, not necessarily guilt or innocence. In my opinion, the court process is separate from that because we have to adhere to the rules and the Constitution and all that stuff. I like commenting on due process, all right, and what happens and why people think what they think and why people do what they do and how we all can learn more about the criminal justice system and how it works. And I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you supporting the channel, and I will see you on the next video.